Hello, everybody. Sorry, there was a small delay there while I was fiddling around with things, and the music sounds a bit strange. Hopefully, it sounds okay at your end. There's something with my speakers on this computer, and I think it's finally giving up on me. So, good evening. I am Sam Blake, and the author of The Dark Room, as you well know. And this evening, we're going to be speaking to James Murphy, who's written a fantastic book called Dark Light, which is the third of a series about a serial killer called The Terror. And also a very, very interesting chap called Seán, who I'm going to be introducing to you now in just 1 second, who is a psychic medium. So forgive me while I just jiggle everybody around, and we'll get everybody up into the stream. I'm going to bring James in first. Just takes a couple of seconds. And then Seán in. Hi there. Anything could happen now. Oh, there he is. That's great. Brilliant. Now, so that we don't look like we're in a sandwich, I'm just going to bring the books in too, and then we'll be beautifully organised. There we go. Now, hi everybody. The people are starting to come on now because we have a little bit of a lag that we can't see. Hopefully everybody can see the same thing I can see. So myself and James are up at the top, and Seán is down at the bottom next to the books. Lovely to have you, Seán. Thank you so much for coming. We both have spooky storylines in our books. Mine is obviously called The Dark Room. It's set in a country house hotel called Hare's Landing. And the investigation in the story is about the investigation Rachel is doing is about a guy called Alfie Bowes, who is a guy who's homeless and dies very tragically in London. And she's investigating that. He's a violinist. And so we have the sound of violins playing through the story. We also have the smell of perfume, and we've lots of slamming doors. James's book is James, do you want to just give us a quick overview as to the spooky side of your book? So, there's all sorts of people joining us here. Sorry, I just interrupted you before you. Sinead, hi Sinead, good evening. Valerie, Teresa, Coleman, whole gang of people on. So tell us a little bit about Dark Light. Just give us an overview, James, for those people who haven't read it.
Yeah, well, the Terror trilogy are all centred around a fictional private detective agency called Farshot Investigations. And my inspiration for Farshot Investigations was my former primary school, which I frequently drive past in West Belfast. It's a derelict building, and it looks really kind of creepy, but creepily attractive. And every time I passed it, I just thought, I need to write about that. And I didn't really do anything about it until I met Seán.
Which is a very spooky story of all of its own, isn't it?
Exactly.
Which we have in now. So it turns out, we were having a chat before this, that James, obviously James and Seán have known each other for a long time. You're going to be able to hear Seán's accent in the minute, and that's a dead giveaway. But in fact, James started writing because of Seán. So how did you meet, and who wants to take that question? James, do you want to just tell us briefly how you meet, and then we'll bring Seán in, because it's
yeah, sure. Well, I'm really into kind of paranormal, and I would be one of those people that watches all the paranormal programs and the most haunted and all that sort of stuff. And if we had a friend staying in our house for the weekend in the days when you could do so, and the chat got round to paranormal, and it was actually the friend had jokingly said, "I've just been to visit my granny," and I was thinking, I thought your granny was dead. And then, of course, it transpired that she'd been to see Seán. She was telling me all about the reading, how fantastic he was, and then kind of just dared me to go and see him. And I took it from there and made an appointment very soon after, and that's when we first met, and that's where the Terror trilogy was born.
Where it started. So Seán, this is really interesting, because what I want you to do is just to tell everybody who's watching it a little bit about you and what you do, and then we can go on to James and find out what you revealed for him. So give us an idea as to what a psychic medium does, because you've got sort of two roles, haven't you? You do tarot, and then you do other spooky.
And then I do mediumship. Yeah, so I am a psychic medium, which means that I work both psychically and also on a mediumistic level. That would maybe be an easy way to explain it. So a standard sort of day to me looks like I'm either reading people's tarot cards and, helping them, give them a wee heads up about maybe things that are going on or changing their path or direction. The tarot would be the psychic aspect. But I've developed my psychic senses, clairvoyance, clairaudience, and so on, so much more than just reading the person in front of me, that I can then get similar information that I would in a tarot reading, I can get that about spirit people. So that would be the mediumship side. So it's a psychic medium. All mediums are psychic, but not all psychics are mediums. So my work really consists of one-to-one sittings, demonstrating mediumship, where I've been up and down Ireland once or twice, taken over to Malta a few times to demonstrate and teach and do readings there. You say spooky and paranormal, and I say, no, that's a bog standard Tuesday.
Okay, so we said earlier, I have to just share this with you now, because I was saying to Sean earlier when he was just explaining about people appearing in rooms and things, and I said to that, are they there when he's brushing his teeth? Does somebody pop up? And what did you say, Sean? Tell us.
Well, it really depends on the day. So say it's the day that I'm getting up and I've clients to say, well, the spirit people aren't going to show up because they know that like their daughter's going to show up at 1 o'clock. So why would they be there? But there has been a few occasions where I've been doing a demonstration of mediumship, which would be me on stage giving out messages. So I like to, as you can tell, dress up for any occasion. So I like to have my shower, and there's been more than one occasion when I used to have her, I'd be washing the hair, and I'd turn around and there'd be a wee lady standing there looking at me going, hello, son, I'm just checking in for later. So, it's kind of like, but day to day, spirit kind of leave me alone unless, I have a client or if it's my guides, and they only come in if it's an emergency. So.
Interesting. It's fascinating. So when James arrived to you for this reading, obviously you've been recommended to him. James, what did you go in thinking was going to happen?
I wasn't skeptical because I was always open to it, but I just didn't think it was going to work for me. And when I met Sean, he was really friendly, as you would expect, as you can see. But one of the first things that I got the impression of was he was very almost breathless. And he met me in a room where he was at the time. We had to walk up a narrow set of stairs, and he had to stop halfway, I remember. And he kind of half turned to me in the stairs and said, sorry, your dad's impressing his lung condition onto me. And that's why I was kind of standing mid-stairs thinking, do I go forward or just run? So from there, it was obviously, there were lots of things that happened within the reading, obviously connection with family and so on. But at one point, Sean actually told me about the idea that I described earlier, about the book, and I have a book in me, and in no uncertain terms of I, Sean, it was a case of go home and get it done.
We're always saying that, Sean. I spend a lot of my time saying that to people. We just about Sean, a book Sean wants to write, and I've basically said the same thing. So I'm very impressed.
Exactly.
Very good. So you did. You went home and got it done, and you've used a character that's similar to Sean in the books, haven't you?
Yeah, we joked at the time that I would write Sean into the book. And
No, sorry, you joked. I was serious.
Yes, and he checked as well. So we have a character inspired by Sean, but what I was worried about, I knew that the book could very easily have had a supernatural strand within it, but I didn't want it to be like, this is going to sound kind of flippant, but I didn't want it to be like Scooby-Doo, where it was like, the ghost was unveiled and, it just easy, lazy writing. I wanted it to be an added layer to the plot.
Yeah.
So from that point of view, I needed someone who I could go to and ask questions about mediumship and the supernatural to make sure that I was writing it properly and treating it well. And thankfully, I had a ready-made go-to guy there.
Excellent. Oh, it's fascinating. And we've actually got two ladies who read tarot on. There's a lot of writers. I think we're a creative lot, aren't we? Amanda Lees and Anne Coates both joined us saying that they do tarot. I was just saying to Sean, ladies, earlier that I've learned from Noelle Harrison, who's another author, was teaching me tarot there. Only I'm really, really terrible at it. So I've got lots to learn. Sean, you've been doing it for years, haven't you? So we'll talk about the spooky bits in a minute, but there's a difference between the psychic tarot and the cards and then the spirits.
Yeah, there is a difference, yes. I've been reading the tarot, believe it or not, for 20 years. I know it's really hard to believe that considering I'm only 18, you know. But I got my first deck of tarot cards when I was 13.
Wow.
My aunt, I will remember this story until the day God calls me. I used to stay with my aunt very regular, and she would give me pocket money along with her kids. And it was only £10. And going back 20 years, you know, a tenner to a 13-year-old's a lot of money. And she only had £8 on her. And I took it, and I went to the Westwood Centre, which is now no longer there, and Eason's had a deck of tarot cards, a wee purple book or box with a book and the deck of cards in it for £6.99. So I was able to get my deck of tarot cards and a bar of chocolate, and my aunt unknowingly has created this monster. So
Fascinating. And tell me, when in the dark room, which obviously written, the girls don't know anything about ghosts and the things that happen around them, and it's not until really the end of the book that we begin to realise that there's the music that they can hear and the perfume they can smell and are these presences. But how did you know when you first started at 13? What was your first, I suppose, spirit moment?
Well, I had a few spirit experiences when I was younger throughout my life, but obviously you kind of think these things are you know, normal. Like I do want to say, you know, you've batted the word supernatural about quite a lot.
Yeah.
And to me, when I hear the word supernatural, it just, in my head, it goes super, as in like supernatural, like it's really natural. So to other people, supernatural is this big thing, but to me, supernatural is just something that's very natural.
Yeah.
You know, so I've had experiences where being around my grandparents as a child. I'll let you in on a wee secret. I was an altar boy up until I was 12. So I was very religious.
Okay.
And my granny would say that I always used to talk to angels. My mum, on the other hand, she would say he's always been a weirdo. So, you know, there's the difference of opinion.
Schools there.
Very much so. And you know what? I agree with both. But I always had experiences. And then it was around when I was 13, the internet became a thing, you know, and with being, you know, so Catholic and an altar boy and having questions that, you know, more mainstream religion couldn't answer for me, I started to explore other things. And then I began to find out it's like, oh, so me sitting talking to this person that nobody else sees isn't normal. You know, it's not the run of the mill average thing. And it just sort of progressed. Like I started doing house parties of tarot readings at the age of 16, I think. Like I was fresh out of school, and I would pick up loads of things psychically about my clients. Now, going back then, it was a tenner for a reading, and it was done in 5 minutes, you know. But then I started to pick up things that sort of startled me a little bit, especially being between the ages of 16, 18, dealing with what I was dealing with in my own life as well, as I'm sure you'll can imagine. I don't need to tell you. And then picking up things where I was maybe reading a female and seeing a spirit baby that she lost. And that just like was a bit too much at that stage for me. So I put my cards away for quite a while and ignored everything, done all the things that a medium should not be doing to black out spirit.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it just came on, and it was like I had to get my cards, I had to start doing readings. I joined a development group. I was there very, very briefly and then started working full time, you know, where I consider myself like I don't follow the normal rule because I've done so much study and development before official training. So then whenever I came to the point I was under instruction of a medium, it's like boom, magic happened.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously it always grows and changes, and then I sit and, you know, have conversations and be like, oh mummy, I have to go, he wants to go home now. And she's like, who? I'm like, oh sorry, my guide. And she's like, please don't tell people you have these conversations, they'll lock you up. And I'm like, I know, but I live with him, so if he wants to go home, I'm going home.
I think it's fascinating. It's really interesting to hear you say that, because as a child, when you're growing up with these things going on around you, you've no concept of the fact that it's not completely normal. I mean, that nobody else is seeing these things and having conversations. And I just think that that's really interesting.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, you go through the denial phase, and then it's not something it's obviously something that you can't switch off. It's just going to be there the whole time. Even if you didn't want to be a medium and you went to be a plumber, then you would still have people popping up.
Yeah. Mediums are born. We're born mediums. That's just the way that it is. Now, I very much come from the school of belief that we are spirit having a physical experience. So if I can talk to you, one physical body, to another physical body, why can we not talk to what we truly are?
Yeah.
Which is spirit. So I believe everyone has that mediumistic ability within them to a certain degree, because it's our spiritual nature, it's who we are. Does not mean everybody is going to be able to do readings day in and day out, but you may be able to, your mediumship may fall under the category of, you have a really depressed friend and you know that her mum is there and you pass on the message. That could be your mediumship. Where my mediumship, it is to teach, it is to demonstrate, it is to provide one-to-one readings. But I believe it's there for everyone, just at various degrees. The wee analogy that I use for my students, sorry, I'm a talker, by the way.
That's fine. Keep going. It's fascinating. Don't worry, I'll stop you.
What I use with my students, it's everybody can sing. Just some people should stick to singing in the shower. Mediumship's the same thing. Everybody can connect to spirit, but it does not necessarily mean that, you're, as the definition that I use, is a working medium, someone that works with spirit as their job,
Yeah, it's fascinating. One of the things you mentioned there, just rolling it back a bit, tiny bit, was place, and that you'd be in a place and there would be spirit around you, and that's one of the things that's in sort of, particularly that's in James's book, and obviously it's in the dark room too. Is that sense of place, and and some places being busier than others, shall we say? James, do you want to just tell us a little bit about the school and the background, and how Seán sort of latches into that, the school that you mentioned earlier right at the start?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it was completely unintentional on my part, but whether fate intervened or whatever, the school that I had chosen to write about as my private detective agency, I found out later, was listed amongst the top of the most haunted buildings in Ireland. And when I found that out, I thought that was fantastic. I mean, it was just a whole, almost like a validation of the story. It kind of made it.
There's serendipitous moments that happens when you're writing, where it all falls into place.
Absolutely, and even further again. I mean, on subsequent visits to Seán, he would kind of say things like, such and such had an influence on this part, and he was telling me stuff that I'd written that no one else had seen. But also kind of directing me that I was on the right line. So I suppose my beta readers are spiritual. It's a bizarre way of putting it.
It's really interesting, that serendipity, isn't it? Because actually that's something that happened to me when I was writing The Dark Room, because the building the house is called Hare's Landing, and I was 2/3 of the way through the book before I realised there was this big thing in Irish mythology about hares being representing the messengers between spirit worlds. And really, when I found that out, it's like it's just like you have one of those serendipitous moments. You think, well, this has to be the right story. There's something going on here. And I think as authors, and you probably both relate to this better, Seán, since you're there, you're the hotline. But as authors, we feel that characters sort of float around us, and we're somehow channeling them. And I don't know if the characters we write are where they came from or what it is, but I think it's a similar type of. We don't necessarily see them standing in the room with us in the same way Seán does, but it's that similar type of thing when somebody's talking to you. It's very interesting, isn't it? So you took Seán.
What's to say you aren't channeling your characters?
Well, that's true. This is the thing. I don't usually he said it now, but I've thought of that. So
yeah,
go on. Yeah, it's very interesting. So you have this school, and it's one of the most haunted places in Ireland. Did you and Seán go there to visit it together, or
not together? I had an opportunity through a paranormal research group, a local paranormal research group, who bought the book. Somebody within the group bought the book, and was delighted to see the building St. Congall's in West Belfast featured, because they had an affinity with the place. They'd investigated it a lot, and it was just one of their favourite places to go and ghost hunting, in inverted commas. So they made contact with me, and I thought, fantastic, I can go in. I was just about to launch the first book. The second book, I should say. I can go in and get some promo shots done. And I was just thinking completely selling the book. I wasn't really thinking too much about the whole paranormal element. So I met with the people and went to the building, which, as I say, is derelict. It had been abandoned for years. The local kind of hoodlums used to go in and light fires in it, and it was just in a really bad state. But when I was a child attending the school, there's a dark basement within the school, and I have the folklore in the local area was that the school was used in I think it was the Second World War. I can't remember, I should have researched this. It was used almost like a military hospital, and there were rumours at the time of an underground bunker connected to the school that you entered via this very spooky basement. So I thought it would be great to pick up on that and have, quite a normal run-of-the-mill private detective agency on the top floor, but actually underneath it was more like an FBI field office, and that they had, that was kind of laying undiscovered, and the plot explains it a lot better than I am at the moment.
You're all good.
So the idea was that my central character, Mark Shaw, he's trying to avenge the murder of his uncle, who he was very close to, and in doing so, he stumbles upon the fact that what he thought was quite a dotty old man who was a private detective actually was much more switched on than he realized, and a lot more connected than he realized. So therefore, this underground bunker was actually part of a bigger thing. So I, kind of getting back to bringing the paranormal people, they brought me in via this basement. So my first impressions were, this is cool. We'll get some like night vision pictures. This is going to be fantastic for promotion. But then suddenly, just being in there, all those childhood memories came flooding back. And I thought, not always happy ones, in the sense that I, as a child, remember being really scared there. So we went through, and I made the guys promise not to shout out, because they were going to try and attract spirit and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, no, that's not why I'm here. But they did anyway.
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
And immediately my mind was drawn to a former caretaker of the school, who again scared me at the time. But they were saying that this person, and I don't want to name names because it is an actual person,
yeah,
but they had caught evidence or had some kind of feedback using this particular name. So I was able to actually tell them a little bit about who that person was in real life.
Yeah.
And then things got a bit spookier from there. From the point of view,
interesting evening by the sounds of things.
Well, yeah, it was very interesting. And actually, I'm just thinking that some of the people watching and listening tonight might actually be more familiar with the building than they realise, because I've just remembered that ITV's Marcella
you were saying the other day,
was actually using that location. So some of the places that I describe in the book and some of the places that I've seen are actually featured within that. But as we went through the building, it was getting more and more. And of course, I was taking all these snaps and getting people to take pictures of me and so on. And then I started, for some reason, conversation died down. I started to feel a little bit uneasy. And we walked along one of the top corridors in the school, which was an area that was unfamiliar to me, because in those days, although it was one building, it was a boys' school and a girls' school, completely segregated. So literally just divided by a courtyard. So we happened to be in the girls' side of the building. And as we were walking along, I had just come from work as a teacher. So I was wearing suit, shirt and tie and all that sort of stuff. And as I was walking along, I felt my jacket sleeves being tugged, quite gently at first, but more and more so as I went on. And the rear lapel of my jacket started getting tugged as well. So the investigators weren't really saying anything at that point. I was petrified, so I wasn't saying anything at that point. I got to the end of the corridor, and quite kind of blasé, one of the investigators said, by the way, we get quite a bit of activity in this corridor. People report seeing spirit children. And the reason why we're quiet was because we knew you were a teacher. And we wondered, would they actually interact? And I was like, so by pulling sleeves and stuff, is that what you mean? And so, of course, then I was kind of set up, I suppose.
Goodness me, that's fascinating. So interesting. And Seán, is that the type of thing that happens to you? I mean, you probably see them much more clearly. Do you? How does something manifest to you as a?
Well, those experiences that I would love experiences like that. Like, I'm very envious of people that have those experiences. Like, I've been to, out with paranormal investigators, and some of the evenings have been a bit of a bust. And I'm going, well, is it because I'm here that they all run away? Like, so I'm quite envious of people that have those experiences. But that's kind of different from my work.
Yeah.
My work is evidential based.
Yeah, this is really interesting, actually. So yeah, to tell us a little bit about that.
So a mediumship reading or a session or whatever you want to call it should be evidential by nature. And if I can explain, evidence should be painting the spirit communicator, that your family back to life. So this is the thing that kind of confuses people a little bit. Some people think, oh, I'm going to go to a medium and my granddad's going to tell me all about my relationship. If there's not adequate evidence to prove that granddad's communicating, it's generally not mediumship. People are very, very message based. So because all mediums are psychic, we can work psychically and get that information. But a mediumship reading should give hard evidence. Now, obviously, it works differently for everyone, but an example that I would share to people is me saying, Granny's here, she's this height, she's this build, she gets her wee rollers done on a Friday, this is how she passed, you would remember her cooking her Sunday dinners. That's all evidence. that relates to the spirit communicator. So what we do can be proved, if that's the right word, based on my client accepting the evidence. So that should be the majority of a mediumship sitting. And then it will move on to the message, which would be, they'll love you, watch out for this or that or the other. But the thing that the point I love to drive into my clients is, your loved ones will only give a message based on their level of their personality. And what that means is, we don't change when we go over there. We don't have our physical ailments, and we don't maybe have resentment and all this type of stuff, but our personality is our soul, and that's what we're communicating with. So if your mum was awful at giving you life advice, she ain't going to be any better from spirit. So at that point, it's from their level of their personality. And even if we look at some of the amazing pioneer mediums, such as Gordon Higginson, he very, very much taught that spirit will never impose their will, which is something that I try to sort of follow in my work. Yeah. Am I getting something psychically? I'll tell my clients that. If Granny is saying, oh, take this job or dump that man, whatever it may be, understand that that's only Granny's personality.
But
That
it's
is
her,
not
and
what
her
you have
personal
to do.
opinion. In the same way,
Mhm.
if she was sitting in the room with you, and you might not, yeah, totally get that. You might not actually take her very seriously at all.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. So those like pulling on the sleeves and like, don't get me wrong, I do get things like that that do happen, but very, very seldom, you know, and more often than not, I will just get a spirit person that'll just hit me a slap in the head if I'm not paying them attention, you know.
It's fascinating. I think probably because you can see them. But I think what's interesting is that the people, I suppose, is the thing I'm trying to get my head around, is that sometimes, obviously, there are places where, like the school that James talked about, where people seem to be trapped, whereas the people who are coming to you are sort of visiting you in order to pass on a message. So is that a thing? Is that a thing, like spirits trapped in a place, or is that me
Well,
using
I can speak
wrong
about
word?
this from my level of understanding, and I do want to make it just clear before we move into that, you know, my word is not gospel, and if people don't agree with me, I can't force you to be right,
No,
really,
it's
you know.
your experience. It's your experience, absolutely.
Yeah, because this is a thing that is very, very widely debated because mediumship is evidential. And especially if you look at spiritualism as a religion, you know, it's a science of spiritualism, and that's what I practice. But in saying that, I have had experiences of, shall we say, haunted houses. I hate that term. You know,
Yeah.
earthbound spirit or spirit release, whatever you want to call it. Where, you know, I have seen someone in a building. I can even go right back to I'm blaming my aunt for this again because it was right back to her house when I was younger. I used to see a woman at the top of her stairs, and the older I got, and you know, the more I was speaking, turns out that woman used to live in that house. You know,
Wow.
so I do believe that there can be earthbound spirit, absolutely. I don't believe it's as common as the amount of phone calls that I get on a week saying my house is haunted. You know, I've stopped going out to people's houses because more often than not, I would go to a house and it would be someone's loved one that wanted to get their attention. So we're maybe talking maybe 1 out of every 10 there is needed to be, and I hate to say spirit rescue because they don't need rescued, but that's the terminology that's used where you
Yeah.
help them sort of, you know, do their thing and cross on over. But it's very few and far in between. I do believe that it 100% happens, absolutely. But again, if I look at it from an evidential point of view, like I've been out to places. Oh, it was that long ago. I don't remember now. I was out with a paranormal investigating team, and they took me out to this house. They didn't tell me where it was that I was going, and rightfully so. You know, they wanted to see what I would pick up, and I'm all about that. So I was walking about, and I was walking through the house, and I took a step, and I was like, "Oh, this is new." And they're like, "What do you mean new?" And I'm like, "This is not part of the house." And they're like, "Interesting." Wrote it down, and then as I was walking about, and I was like, "One sit and just sit in silence for a few minutes," and then I heard this overwhelming like crying, and I was able to describe to the people what it was, and they didn't give me anything at the time as I was going along. It wasn't until afterwards, and then they were like that street, that area that I was in, lovely wee area as well. I'm not talking bad about it. There was a poor house, if that's the right word, way back when, and there would have been literally people dying of hunger on the street, and that was the feeling of the crying that I was getting of these, you know, people that were there, and the house that I was in, I was able to, like I said, oh, this is new. That was actually a new part that they had added on to that house. And I picked up like a medical camp, which I don't know the place. It's Scotland. Is it Gretna Green?
Yeah,
Mhm.
where the marriages take place, where you can go and get
Yeah.
married.
So there was this place that I was in. You could have got to Gretna Green via boat from there.
Oh, I see.
So,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
going back even further, that was like a medical army thing. Sorry, I'm so bad with the
That's
explanation.
okay. But you can feel that there's loads going on in this place that they took you
Yeah,
to.
but
It's
a lot of
really
that came from the land, not
yeah,
the building,
yeah,
which I
yeah,
find is very interesting as well. You
yeah.
know, the land can give off a residual energy, but the land can also give off a residual psychic energy that sometimes it needs to be worked on, or Have you ever watched Sleeping Beauty?
Yeah, yeah.
They're always saying even the walls have ears and they
Yeah.
turn tiny and on the go. They really do. Now, not physical ears, but the walls will absorb energy of the people that live in the house. And you ever walk into, maybe you're going to view a home and you're like, oh, I don't like it here.
I'm just going to stop you there for 1 second. I'm sitting in a 200-year-old post office, and this
Oh,
the room
fuck.
I'm in was the post office. So just don't get too spooky
Love it.
because you'll scare the living daylights out of me. This is one of
Yeah,
the
you know,
proviso I should have said before we started. But anyway, keep going. Sorry.
you see, if see a home, and I hate to use these words, especially being online, because I know it can be potentially triggering for some people. But say there's an abusive relationship and they live in a home, you know, and it's fighting, it's arguing, it's fighting, it's arguing. All that energy is going to be about that property. So a lot of people can walk in and feel that. And a
Yeah.
lot of people can feel that. And because Hollywood portrays, you know, haunted houses, people automatically assume spirit.
Yeah.
When it's
And it's
not
going to be
always.
negative too. And that's a negative.
It's sometimes it's psychic, it's not even spirit.
Yeah.
You know, you're just picking up on that argument that has happened
Right.
over, say, that decade that that family lived there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's fascinating.
I
Really
forget what the question was, but I hope I
No,
answered
don't
it.
worry. It's fine. No, it's really well. We were talking about place and that sense of and energy is very interesting. And talking about that, what I do find very interesting is the whole evidential thing because I had a lovely lady called Tina Barco who helped me launch the dark room there a couple of weeks ago, who works with Paranormal Research Science, who I think Sinead's still with us, she was talking about evidence too, and that's one of the things that they were talking about was the fact that actually they don't believe anything until they have the proof. And I find that fascinating, in fact, because that nearly, I suppose, turns your assumptions on the head, because we tend to think, oh, you're going to walk in and assume these people are going to be here, but actually you are looking for something that can't be explained, I suppose, and then the explanation is perhaps spirit. It's really, really interesting. I'm loving the people tugging at your sleeves there, James. It's totally strange. Has anything else happened to you, James, like that?
Well, I would be.
Was that not last year?
So yeah, I mean, I would send stuff quite a lot, to the extent where at one stage when I was visiting Sean, I was saying I don't really want this anymore, which we subsequently talked about. But yeah, I mean, I would frequently, for example, see our dog who passed on possibly about 5 years ago, in and around 5 years ago, and he was basically our baby before we had a baby. So we had him for 16 and a half years. So when he died, we were heartbroken.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was really kind of finding it quite difficult to deal with. So I thought, I'm going to have to go and see Sean. So one of my claims to fame is that I'm I think the first person who got Sean to channel the dog. Don't know if he's done it since.
I have quite a lot. Thank you.
Lovely. Oh, so you were able to. So tell us about the dog. What happened with the meeting? What happened?
Well, I have been during times when I'm particularly when I'm stressed, I was noticing that if you go to kind of move across a room, sometimes you would feel on the carpet would be slightly warmer, and it would be maybe where he lay or whatever.
Yeah.
And one day I actually was coming out of the bathroom, actually coming out of the ensuite, and our bed literally faces the ensuite, and he was sitting on the bed looking at me. And I thought, okay. I was delighted, obviously, but at the same time, I was thinking, I was actually worried, because I was thinking, am I starting to open up the spirit? Is the next thing going to be that I'm going to see a person?
Yeah.
So although I was delighted to see the dog, I didn't want anything like that. Like the idea of them visiting the house, absolutely. But turning around in the shower and seeing some of them, but no, that's not going to happen. Thank you. But I actually went to Sean and he talked to me about the dog, and as I say, kind of jokingly channeled the dog in the sense that he gave me messages about what the dog had been thinking. And one of the things, and I still have it actually to this day, after he died, he had a little chain on his collar with his name on it. and I took it off and put it on my car keys so that it would be kind of quite close by.
Yeah.
Seán was able to tell me that I'd done that, and that the dog was delighted with the fact.
Aw.
And also we had him cremated and so on. And we decided to keep, get like a special box done up and all that sort of stuff. And again, Seán said, oh, by the way, he says he loves his resting place. But of course, it had the end on it kind of quite not a sour note, but a kind of like a little dig from the dog saying, didn't really walk me enough though, did you?
It's amazing. So interesting. There's a brilliant question here, Seán, from Sinead, saying, which is actually one of the questions I'd love to ask you too. If you feel that you've got that a little bit of ability, how do you make that stronger? And I think you said earlier that you felt that everybody's born with a bit of this ability, but not everybody is able to develop it. So what would you, I mean, because you have students, don't you? Do you teach?
Yeah, I always recommend adequate training, because you need someone that is going to not only teach you how to open up, but more importantly, how to close down. Because when mediums work, we work in an altered state of consciousness, so that we're able to effectively access another dimension, and you cannot be connected to that 24/7. You will get sick. It will take its toll on you. So you need to learn to open up and close down correctly. And you also need to learn exactly what mediumship is. And this is where I get very, very passionate about teaching, because a lot of people see mediumship as gonna charge this amount of money, gonna give messages, leave my job, when it's actually a service of healing for not only the client, but the spirit person. And a lot of people don't understand that it's a soul that you're working with. It's not a party piece.
Yeah.
This is a living soul that you're working with. This was someone that experienced a life in this physical dimension.
Yeah.
And you need to understand exactly what you're doing, because you do not want to do them a disservice. Because once you crook it and you go over there, you're going to have a list or a big row of them all going, so what did you say about me? Did you tell my daughter I said this? And you don't really want that. And you want to understand the mechanics of it all.
Yeah.
Because mediumship takes time to develop. If you look at university, for example, you're going to uni for 4 or 5 years, and you walk away with a master's in one thing. Maybe two, if you're. So look at mediumship development. On the whole, it's 90 minutes to 2 hours a week. You need to have the dedication, the love for it, to be able to sit in a development group for years to develop. Like I, up until recently, still went on workshops and seminars, and thankfully I have a friend who's watching, Nicola Corner. She's a remarkable medium. She teaches mediums. She's wrote the book on it. I joke about that, but it's not a joke. It's quite literal. She's wrote the book on it, and I'm grateful that I have someone so experienced as a medium that I can pick up the phone and go, Nicola, I'm struggling with my work, because it happens. And I understand what I'm doing. So find yourself a medium that has research as well. Like, recommendations are great. You don't go to your nail tech or a hairdresser.
Yeah. You need to connect to that person. Yeah.
But you need to know that they know what they're doing. Because if a poorly trained medium is going to teach, they're only going to teach poorly trained mediums. Does that make sense? So, like, I as where I'm going to bum and blow about myself. What sets my teaching apart from other training out there is I run an 8-month mentoring program that is divided into 2 parts. Every week, my students, they get a theory video that goes anything from 10 to 30 minutes. And then also midweek, we meet up on Zoom for practical application. So whether that be psychic development or mediumistic or whatever it is that we're doing, so people have the theory give to them. What is the mind? How does the mind work? What happens to a medium's aura during a spirit contact? These are things people need to know in
Yeah,
order to
it's fascinating.
understand. Like
Yeah,
our work, I hate to say our work is draining because it's not. It's amazing, but it's tiring. Like
yeah,
if you were to ask me to give us a spirit contact now, I wouldn't be able to because I've done 6 readings today back to back.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, I need
It's
time to
so-
rest and to recover, and you need to have proper training. I'm all about like training properly. You
yeah,
know, if you've a raw natural talent, say look at it then another way analogy. Say you're really good at doing people's hair. That does not mean you can walk onto a salon floor and start cutting and coloring.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, you may be really good at doing curls and pinning it up. Does not make you a hairdresser.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant analogy, and it's like writing a book. Actually, a lot of people, we all think we can write books, but then actually taking it to the stage of actually being readable is an entirely different thing altogether.
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating. Do you find it very emotionally draining? I mean, is that something that people obviously need to understand, and the switching down and
You
switching off?
know, it can be like you're dealing with a lot, and especially like there's a lot of things that I'm not allowed to speak about due to solicitors and things like that have advised me not to. Like it's a type of I don't know if I'm the exception to this, but I've had stalkers, you know, due to my work, due to people depending too much upon me for
Yeah, I
that
can see.
connection to their
Yeah,
loved ones.
yeah,
Like I've had people show up at my door at silly o'clock, you know. Um, the work you could be 1 minute doing a tarot reading, telling someone, "Oh, it's lovely, you're gonna meet a man, gorgeous, loads of money, rah rah rah." Next thing, you're gonna have a mother who's lost a child,
yeah,
you know, and you are
yeah.
not allowed to break down and cry in front of that
No,
client,
yeah,
like because
absolutely.
you're the strength, you have to provide that healing for that spirit and
Yeah,
for that person sitting in front of you. I like, you know, as crazy as I am, I'm sure you have noticed by now, I take my work very, very serious. You know, and I have a laugh when I work. See, if you watch my Facebook lives, you'll be like, there's something wrong with him. You know, if you come to one of my demonstrations, you'll be like, James is laughing, he knows. You know, you will think, oh my God, he thinks he's doing stand up. But see, the parts that I'm working, my mind and my heart and my soul are with spirit,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know, and it's not something to be taken lightly.
It's
I'm
fascinating.
so
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, no, I think that's so. I mean, it's so true, and because the chances of somebody coming through or needing to come through, it's all to do with emotion and to do with people's
Mhm.
issues and those and the problems they have. I suppose it sounds actually a bit like counselling, and that when you're trained to do counselling, we've lost James. His internet
Oh,
connection must have gone. He'll come back to us, I'm sure, in a minute. When you're trained to do counselling, you have to learn at the end of the session to hand back the the trauma and the grief and the various bits, because you can't take it away with you, because otherwise that adds to everything, and you end up in a big mess. So I think that's really interesting what you're saying there about learning how to
mhm.
do things properly, and that whole emotional side of it. I'll wait for James to come back in. I'm just going to move these books because they're a bit
Yeah,
we
like there's always that part of, you know, doctor-patient confidentiality. Like I
yeah,
have to practice that as well, you know, and there is the likes of, you know, like I mentioned, my friend Nicola. Um, I've had to phone her and be like, listen, she knows the crack, she's a medium. And I'm like,
yeah,
listen, I'm not telling you about my reading, but I'm telling you that because like I need someone to tell.
yeah,
Like I need
yeah,
I need to be like this has messed me up a little bit here. You know, it's not all, you know, as my Brandon psychic in the city, it's not all as fun and games as that. You know, usually people that come to mediums, they're coming because uh, doctors have failed on them, counselors have failed on them, their
yeah,
religion has failed on them.
yeah,
And it's usually like, you know, and it mightn't be the very common, but normally sometimes people will come that they're at the end of their tether,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know, and it's like they're reaching out. And there's been plenty of times I've done readings for people that I've knew I've got in there in time. And I'm
yeah,
not going, oh my God, I'm brilliant. I've seen
yeah. No,
not
no,
at
no. I know.
all. But it's
Yeah,
like they've heard what they needed because
yeah,
everything else has let them down. And
yeah,
then there's other people see it as a quick buck. Now I'm quite thankful that, you know, Spirit allow me to make money off what I do, you know, and I can do other things with that money.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, I can give money to local charities. I can, you know, hand out money to all those types of things. But I'm very lucky that Spirit allow me to do what I do. And I think it's because I've always came of this mindset of like, I'm here to help people.
Yeah.
Like, not only have I trained in mediumship, I've trained in hypnotherapy, I've trained in NLP, you name it, I've trained in all these different things. I went and I got a BTEC in health and nutrition so that I can understand when I'm talking to people about their ailments, I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I think that's so important to have that extra, all those extra layers, because that gives you then, because it's very serious stuff, it's very emotional, and it gives you that ability to connect and know what to say. Because I think one of the things, certainly anybody who goes to tarot as a punter, you have a huge responsibility, because you're going to know stuff and learn stuff that maybe you shouldn't pass on as well. And it's that, I suppose, it's having that understanding the person, connecting with the person, and then knowing what to say, what not to say. It is a huge responsibility. It must be exhausting, like you say.
Absolutely. And again, like, I have real foot and mouth syndrome. Like, I just say things. And, you know, and it's also people's level of understanding as well. There has been plenty of times as a professional, I hate that word, but as, you know, someone that has been doing this day in and day out, I have said something that in my mind meant, nah, but my client's reaction, and I've had to backtrack immediately and go, I'm sorry, what did you hear me say there?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, because
So
how I've
significant.
said something and how they've understood it could be worlds apart.
Yeah, yeah,
You
definitely.
know, and you gotta, you know, and like I said, I teach an 8-month mentorship. Everyone that I do an enrollment call with, I say to them, like, I am not making you a medium at the end of this. You know, I'm giving you the knowledge and the theory in the practice of mediumship.
In order to make
You
it
can
happen.
train with me for years afterwards,
Yeah.
but this is what you're signing up to. It's an ongoing training, you know.
I think it really, I get that sense. I'm going to try and bring James back in now. I think your spirit friends are the ones booting him out here. He's just going to count him back in, see if he can stay now. Now, James, don't touch anything.
I'm doing nothing, wasn't me.
Spirits are booting you out. Every time you came in there, you get bopped out again. Sorry about that. I wasn't looking at anything at all. Lovely to have you back again with us here. We popped the book. I can't even find the books. I don't know if I can. But we were just talking there about the emotional side of it and how difficult it is to, well, how much you have to learn in order to tune into people and be responsible and know what you can say and what you can't say. And I think that it's so interesting. And do people come to you in different ways, Seán? I mean, do you find, do spirits manifest in different ways, or do they tend to manifest in the same way? Is that even a question?
It's everybody's mediumship is unique to them. So I'm sure you have heard of the clairaudience. So there are senses. So it all depends on how you work as an individual. I'm at the minute now, I'm predominantly claircognizance, which means I just know.
Okay.
I've got to the stage where I don't need to see, I don't need to hear. It's a bit of a nightmare, but because I don't see and I don't hear and I don't feel, where that sort of shows that I've developed and I've worked in all
a different
this.
level, and you just know.
So it's like, normally what happens is I'll feel the spirit person come into my energy to about here, and then I hear a lot of talking. Now, well, sometimes it's their voice, sometimes it's mine, and it just comes out, and it's like, just I start describing just everything that happens. Now, a lot of people will usually start kind of clairsentient, which is your sensing. So that's like, you know, if you've ever seen a medium work and they're going, like James said earlier about walking up the stairs and me going, your dad's impressing this on me.
Yeah.
That's a clairsentient thing. So I was feeling that. And that's normally what people will work with, because they're feeling it in their body.
Yeah.
So they know that they're getting it.
Like something's happening. Yeah. Something, going on. That's fast.
But how to sort of just, you know, to me now, it's just, I feel them there, and then it starts. And then sometimes I get in trouble because I repeat what they say word for word. And, you know.
We're expecting you to interpret it a little bit. Oh dear, it's absolutely fascinating. It really is interesting. And and so do you have a constant stream of clients, of people?
Yes, I don't have a free weekend or evening until, I don't know, I was speaking to my assistant earlier, and I think it's September. Now, I have scattered afternoons. Like, you could probably get in tomorrow afternoon. I'm not trying to be like, oh, look at me, but you've no hope of getting an evening or a weekend with me until the end of this year, you know.
Goodness. And are you finding lockdown and this whole pandemic thing, is that increased your business? I mean, are people?
My business has thankfully always been steady, which is great. It's steady to the point of I'm not doing it all day, every day.
Yeah.
And I have time to explore other things in my life,
Yeah.
such as learning the likes of hypnotherapy to help my clients a bit more. So I'm thankful that the days that I work are busy. Like I said, there's a few scattered places. I can't say I'm busier than what I would have been, pre-lockdown.
That's probably a good thing in the grand scheme of things, and people's mental health. That's probably a very good thing.
Yeah,
so
and there hasn't thankfully been anything related to this come through in readings. In fact, I'm actually quite happy now that the tarot readings that I've been doing recently are showing with my clients an awful lot of movement going on in their life from April onwards. So that's quite nice.
Hold on.
Whether that means something or not, I don't know. But I was doing a
see.
reading for a client yesterday, and I seen a holiday at the end of August for her. So
Wow.
I'm going, right, these are starting to show
signs.
movement with people's work and their this and their that. So fingers crossed.
That's so good to hear, Sean. That is fantastic. So Helen's just asking, do you believe in reincarnation? That's a really
Yes, God, it would be awfully boring if we lived this life and then went to heaven and we're there for the rest of eternity.
That was it done. Yeah, the whole past life thing. So you get that? Is that a thing?
I believe in it. Again, it's kind of like the haunted houses. It's kind of debated. But I'm a believer in it. It's been wrote about in religions much older than than anything that's modern. So there's got to be something to it.
Yeah, I think as individuals, sometimes you get feelings about things, don't you, that you feel might be connected to a previous existence, or and when you meet people, do you access those? Is that a different thing, accessing the past lives, or is that?
I can access past lives, yes, but again, it's not very evidential based, so I don't do it very often.
Yeah. Okay.
But I have trained in things that do deal with past lives, because I thought this is going to be the thing that's going to help my clients. Turned out it wasn't. So I wasted lots of money training in that.
Well, it's so useful. It'll come useful one day.
It is. It provides a lot of insight,
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. And Amanda's just asking what tarot pack you prefer. We were talking about that right at the start.
I have the Faulkner Tarot right here. I use the black and white deck with the Faulkner Tarot. So let me say it on camera.
Oh yeah, look at that.
So they have images of everyday life on them that step away from dark, scurrier images that you would find in more traditional tarot decks.
Yeah.
So I have been reading these cards for about 8 years. I have been
so you're
teaching
them. You're the only teacher
from
in Ireland.
2014.
Yeah, you're the only teacher in Ireland for that.
Yeah, I'm the only certified Faulkner Tarot trainer in Ireland. And do you want the inside scoop on the tarot?
We do. Yes, please.
Okay. I am currently putting together a book on the tarot, which based on the past decade of my work of more modern meanings to the tarot. So rather than things like, moving house and pregnancy and I have documented with my clients similar things that have came up in reading, such as, bank fraud, social media bullying, online dating, so I've documented these, and now I'm condensing this into a book.
So you've seen the connection. You've seen the connection in the cards, and when that comes up that's.
And I've seen it time and time again over the past 10 years of doing readings. So it was like after a wee while I started making note of it, and then I started tallying. Okay, that combinations came up again, and it meant the same thing. The client could retally goes there, So I'm gonna have that hopefully all put together very soon.
We'll be talking again about that later. We were talking about that before we started. So that's it's absolutely fascinating, because that's the thing, and that's the skill, I think, of somebody who's worked with the tarot for so long. And that you do see this repeat of cards, and it's understanding then the relationships between cards, isn't it? Much more so than just actually what the individual cards mean.
Oh, absolutely. It's the tarot, in my opinion. The tarot is my love. Like it is. Like I joke and say I left my ex-husband for my tarot cards. The tarot is my everything, and they have been for 20 years of my life. Like, the tarot have been involved in my life more than half of my life, and the tarot is a skill set. Like, anybody can pick up a card and go intuitively, this is what this means. But that's not always correct, because the tarot mean things. The tarot are the tarot. Like, you could go for an angel card reading, or you could do an angel card reading, and the same cards could fall out for 16 different people and mean 16 vastly different things. But the tarot, like, what we card have we got here? Once me not remembering it. So we've got the Hanged Man here.
Yeah.
So one of the meanings of the Hanged Man is always patience. So that's one of the meanings, it's patience. But then, depending upon what falls out next to it, will tell me what it's about. But I don't look at the Hanged Man ever and go, oh, this is the Hanged Man, it means a holiday, because that's not the meaning.
Yeah.
So this is going to be, okay, so this means patience. And then if I add the next week card, which is the High Priestess, let me say, sorry. So the High Priestess is all about learning something new or learning something spiritual. It's very fitting for me, isn't it? Patience with the book.
I tell you, it's perfect. People are telling us they're already, they want to buy your book already. And I was saying earlier when we came in, I know somebody that can make this happen. So we should write it first, because at the moment everything's in note form, isn't it? So that's the key thing, is to get it all written. So this has been absolutely fascinating, Sean.
These are the first people I've told about that, by the way.
No, it's top secret, not in public at all. No, I mean, it's all. It's brilliant. No, don't worry, I'll be able to talk
this isn't live. Sure, it's not. You can edit that out. Nobody knows.
No, it's great. No, it's so interesting. It's so interesting to hear about, James, your book and your experience and how you've ended up writing the trilogy and all the things that you've drawn into it with the layers. And fascinating to hear about your whole background, Sean, everything that goes on. How can people get in touch with you? What's the best way?
Please don't phone me, because I never pick up the phone. You can find me on Facebook on Psychic in the City is my business page. My name is Seán McGeough. I'm sure you'll see that in the group or whatever. My website and my YouTube are psychicinthecity.co.uk is the website. But you might be interested to know, with YouTube, I am going to be doing monthly tarot scopes, which is tarot readings for your horoscopes.
Ooh, that'll be interesting.
Can I just plug myself just a little bit more here? Okay, cool. On Saturday, the 27th of February, I'm doing a demonstration of mediumship on Zoom as well. So numbers are limited to 25. I only announced it last night because my assistant booked it and put it on. Had nothing to do with me. So people have asked, and there it is. So it's going to be at the end of the month, if people want to see me in action doing mediumship. So. And can
they book that through your webpage? So if they go to Psychic,
it's posted on Facebook. The tickets are on Eventbrite.
So they need to follow Psychic in the City on Facebook, guys. You know what to do. And go ping Sean if you need him, and you'll know now. All these people are going to know, and we always get lots of views post event too. So
awesome.
So thank you so much indeed. It's been absolutely fascinating. Our hour, I have to say, is up. I could talk to you all evening. James, it's fascinating to hear about your school children pulling at the sleeve there, and the whole book and how it came together. So thank you, gentlemen, so much for joining me to talk people, places, supernatural and spooky things, and hope everybody has a great evening. And if you've any questions for Sean, I'm sure you can fire them onto his Facebook page. Definitely. Thank you so much indeed. I'll stop it now and say good night to everybody.